right, it's good to be with you today. Always good to be with you whenever we can. Jordan, have I ever told you the story about the flour fiasco?
I don't think so.
Never told you that story?
No.
Okay. Well, it happened a long, long time ago, of course. When you're old, all your stories happen long, long time ago. But it happened when I was a kid. I don't know how old I was, 10 or 12, and I was getting underneath my mother's feet. She was getting tired of me being in the house, and she sent me into the garden to weed the garden, or to weed the flower bed. So I needed something to do, so I went out to the flower bed to weed it, to get rid of all the unwanted plants in there. The only thing was, I didn't know the difference between a weed and a flower. The only way that I knew the difference is if it was blooming, if it had some color coming out of it, I figured it was a flower. And if it did not have any color coming out, it was probably a weed. It was just green. So I did a pretty good job of weeding that flower bed. There wasn't much left when I was done. There was just a few plants that had these little buds on them, and apparently when my mom came out, those were weeds that were flowering.
No.
So why do I bring up that story? One is, don't ever ask me to weed your flower bed, because I don't know the difference, right?
Me either.
But our story this week in the gospel reading is the story of the wheat and the weeds, right?
Wheat in the weeds. Yeah.
When the farmer planted a wheat field and then somebody overnight planted weeds, and the servants wanted to go out and pull all the weeds out, and the farmer said, no, leave them alone, let them grow together, right? Very good advice, right? Because it's not always easy to tell the difference between a weed and the wheat. I certainly would not be able to tell. And part of the story tells us that in this world, in God's good creation, is both good and bad people, right? But it's not always easy to tell the difference between good and bad people.
Yeah.
We like to think we can tell the difference and would like to get rid of all the bad people, but God's pretty clear that we all belong together. And I think part of what the story tells me is that even within myself, right, is some goodness and some badness. Because I certainly don't want to be that bad person that needs to be plucked. But in somebody's eyes, I might be a weed that needs to be pulled out, right?
Yeah.
So I'm real hesitant on just judging somebody as good or bad, because there's all that resides in each of us.
And you don't know somebody's story prior, right? Because you may think, oh, you're such a weed, like you're not a good person because you did X, Y, and Z. But there's grace and there's forgiveness and, yeah, giving somebody a second chance. Let them grow and see what happens.
Because you never know, right? The weeds that I left in the flower bed, to me, were beautiful flowers. And I think they probably were to God too, so.
Those dandelions.
So, it's just that story that we hear all the time, judge not lest you be judged, right? We all belong in God's kingdom together, the good, the bad, whatever we are. And it's not our job to pull the weeds, but it's God's.
Exactly.
Until we see you, peace. Thank you.